Welcome everybody. My name is Mr. Sutphin. I am the Culinary Arts 1 and Culinary Arts 2 teacher at RVS Riverside Virtual High. And today I'm in the Riverside TV studio. As you guys have heard me say more times than I can probably remember here, this is my hero. He's the one that I've basically learned from, Mr. Bobby Flay. So this is a cookbook. I mean, I have a whole collection of his cookbooks here. If anybody watches the Food Network like I do, it is a competition show. And so there are real chefs out in the world that basically make a certain dish, their signature dish. And they challenge him to come and cook this dish and do it better than they can. Something they've been doing for their whole careers. And so he and two other people go in and they learn how to do the dish in the labs at the Food Network. And then they go on and compete live. So what we are going to do today is make a recipe from his cookbook. This is going to be a macaroni and cheese carbonara. As you can see here, I got all the ingredients kind of laid out. I did most of the prep work, so let me just kind of give you a heads up of what we have here. This here is basically an Asiago cheese. So you see we got two different bowls here. The first bowl is going to be the one that's going to be the predominant thing. I'm going to mix it together with the macaroni. These in the front are going to be something that goes on top of the dish. And then we're going to sprinkle a little bit of Caesar croutons ground up, and then we're going to put that on top. We're going to bake it to crispy. So this is Asiago cheese. This one here is an Irish cheddar cheese. So if you've never had this before, this is one of the, I eat this just straight, or crackers. So if you guys ever see these, you can get it at Vaughn's, get it at most markets. It's very sharp tasting. Now the recipe that Bobby has here is typically it is to use certain ingredients. Now one thing that I'm kind of teaching you guys about in this class is that you can change recipes. And if you find the need, there's ways you can go and add something that's different. So in his dish, he asked for American cheddar cheese. And that's pretty standard. I instead am going to use Australian cheddar cheese. So it's a little bit different, a little bit sharper flavor. So this is what this one is. And actually I have two different types of that Australian cheddar cheese. I got an extra sharp and a regular one. So we will be seeing how that turns out. Then our fourth one is a Fontina cheese. It's kind of a creamier cheese. These ones are a little bit more harder cheeses. This one's a little bit creamier. And then we got our Parmesan. Let's get started on cooking the dish. So the first thing you want to do is, I wanted to show you, because I know in class, one thing that we did in Culinary 1 is we learned knife skills, okay? And so I'm going to show you some of these knife skills that we had in that assignment about garlic. So I've already peeled the garlic because it's just time consuming, so I wanted to save a little bit of time. So as you can see here, I've kind of taken the skin off of it a little bit. But remember, when you're doing garlic, take the flat edge of the knife, put the palm of your hand, and just kind of crush it down like so, and that will crack open the garlic. Okay, as you can see here, these things are a little bit. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to mince the garlic. And remember the technique, you don't want to get your fingers too close to it, so I'm going to kind of chop it a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of mince them, just going to kind of real slicely thin them, almost like I'm doing a julienne cut of so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to then mince the garlic, and I'll show you how that is. So sorry kids, I did not have the opportunity to do this in class because we are not in person. So then make sure, remember the claw technique, okay? So when you're cutting things, you don't want to cut your fingers. So you're always using the claw technique, and you're going to chop it, and you never raise your knife over your knuckles, okay? Because by doing so, if you raise it higher, that's where you can have injuries. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to slice these a little bit more here. And then we're going to use this technique where we go back and forth, and we kind of just so you see what I'm doing is I'm not just going up and down like a guillotine. What I'm doing is I'm putting my hands on it, stabilizing it where it never comes off the cutting board. And I'm just kind of down and forward on the knife. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in our container. Okay. Oops, we got some of it out here, and so forth. Now, one thing we also learned is food safety. So when we are going between different things that we're going to be cutting, we're going to clean the knife real quick. So let me just do that real fast here. And remember, when we are doing any kind of cutting, never cut any vegetables on the same cutting board that you're cutting any proteins, because that's where you have cross-contamination, and that's where you could have people getting really, really sick. So you want to be careful of that. Okay, a bit more. So now we got our garlic cut. Okay, so now what we're going to do, let's just move this out of the way for a second. Now we're going to do our herbs. What do we have here? Okay, so we have some thyme. So this is really good flavor. It's very powerful flavor, so we're not going to need to use a lot of it. And then this is flat leaf Italian parsley. So if you go to the market, you're going to see two different kinds of parsley. And there's going to be one that's kind of like you see why they call it flat leaf. It kind of has a flat leaf on it, whereas the other kind of parsley, it's going to be kind of a little bit different kind of shape on it, and it's not as flavorful. So this, if you're going to use this, I would recommend this kind. Now this recipe did specifically call for this. Like I said, I made a change on the cheese. And so what we're looking for is we need 1/2 cup of freshly chopped parsley. So what I do, and I'm just guessing that this is the amount. So what I will do is I take it and I roll it really tight. Really tight. And what I'm gonna do then is I'm just gonna kind of do, again, the same thing. Not a guillotine, but you're gonna down, forward, down, forward. You're just getting the initial part of the parsley chopped. And this may be more than we really need. And I'm just moving it like so, down and forward, down and forward. So like I say, this is something we did. We didn't do it with parsley. We did this with onions. We did it with garlic and other types of things. And then we also did a chiffonade cut, which is with basil. So I'm just going to kind of get it to the point where it's a little bit smaller than this. But we need 1/2 cup of it. And as you get fast, get more comfortable, you're going to notice you're going to pick up speed pretty easily. There is our parsley. So now we're going to measure 1/2 cup. So let's go get our measuring cups. Now there's two ways you can do it, as I've shown you guys in class. We have the regular measuring cups. Now remember, these are not for liquids. These are for liquids. These are for dry ingredients. Now you can put liquids in these, but again, you fill it up, spills, so it's a problem. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to measure it in here. And it looks like we probably have the right amount. So perfect. Okay, so. Okay, so I judged exactly correctly here. I got 1/2 cup. Okay. So now, put that in there. And we're going to be coming back to that eventually here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the thyme. So how much time do we need? We need a lot of time. No, we need, let's see here. I have to find it here. 2 teaspoons. So we don't really need a lot of this because it's got a very strong flavor. So if you've never seen it, this is what thyme looks like. It's a pretty wonderful herb, yeah. And you can probably grow it in your garden if you want to do that. So what I do with this, and there's tricks to thyme and these kind of ingredients. I'm just going to tear off a couple of them. And we're not going to keep the, I'm just going to peel off the leaves. I'm not going to keep the other parts of it. So see here, and the trick to this is, you see the leaves, you can pull them down like so, and sometimes they're easier than others, but sometimes they're a little bit more difficult. But I don't want to get the sticks in there. So I'm just trying to take those off as much as I can. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop this up again. Again, you're just kind of pushing the knife forward, holding your fingers on top to stabilize it. I would recommend a wooden cutting board other than this. Like I say, otherwise you can just put this on, put a towel underneath it. Okay. What do we do next? So now we prepped our food, but there's one more thing we have to do. Okay, so what are we gonna do? Got some fresh eggs here. Now, also remember, if you have a recipe and it's asking for eggs and it does not specify, always assume it's a large egg. If it's supposed to be a small, extra large, it will tell you. So what I'm going to do is I need to just get the egg yolks. I don't want the eggs themselves. I'm sorry, the egg whites. So when we do it, hold it like so. Just lightly crack it on the side, like that. And then what I'm going to do, just be careful, you don't want to get the shells. And if you see here, I just pop the egg yolk into this. It's like a little carrying case here, right? You just go back and forth, boom. And there is your egg yolk. And if you want, you can use these for something else. You could actually use like an immersion blender, which I'm going to show you guys later here on what that is. And as I kind of demoed in the class a while back, you could use this and you can make like meringues with it and all sorts of yummy things. So always have something where the egg whites can go into. Now in this case, we're not going to use the whites for anything. So once we're done, we're just going to toss them. And just kind of roll it back and forth, like so. So you get all the white out of there. So now we can get into the gist of the recipe. We've done all of our prep work. So now, what is the first thing we have to do? Okay, so as we were learning in class, at least in Culinary 1, we're going to read a recipe. So I'm going to kind of teach you how to read this recipe. So I'm going to kind of go through it step by step. What is the first thing it says? Preheat the oven to 375 degrees, butter the bottom and sides of a 10 by 10 by 2 inch baking dish and set it aside. Okay, so usually when you read these recipes, the first thing it's going to tell you to preheat it if you're going to be baking something. So I've already had the oven preheating. Probably takes 5-10 minutes to do it depending upon your oven. So that's done. So now we're going to butter the sides of the pan. And here's the pan I'm going to use today. This is an old pan from my mom that I have received from the years. And she probably doesn't even know where it is, but she doesn't really cook anymore, so it's probably okay. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to butter the pan. Now, how do I do that? I've had some butter sitting on the counter trying to get to room temperature. Okay. And why do I do that? Well, if it's in the fridge and you take it out, it's not going to spread real easily. There's different ways you can do it. Sometimes I see people, they'll take the butter and they'll put it like on a paper towel or some kind of dish rag, and then they'll, and then rub it like that. Or you could, if you wanted to, you could do the cooking spray. I don't like the cooking spray. I like the real thing. So I'm just gonna think of like an art project. I'm just gonna do this. Get the pan all buttered up, like so. So I just kind of did a lightly buttered it here. So. And if you want more or less, that's fine. You can do it as much as you want on it. I'm going to set it off the stove because I don't want it to melt. I want it to kind of stay away from the heat for the second. Okay, so now we're preheating the oven. We've got our pan ready. Now I need to get my olive oil out. Okay. Now this one does call for olive oil, but if you don't have this, you can always use some substitute. One thing I cook with a lot is avocado oil. It has a lot of flavor to it. This is a little thicker than like the avocado oils. You could use canola if you don't have anything, so vegetable oil would work, but this is a little bit more flavor. So it wants me to heat it. So I'm going to heat the oil in the saucepan. So 1 tablespoon of olive oil. 1, 2. Just lightly pour it, count of 2, and that can actually do it. And you can always add more, but you can't take it away. So I usually just recommend putting just a light sprinkling of it. Okay, so now we're going to heat the pan, and then we're going to add the pancetta. What is pancetta? You guys ever had this before? This is Italian ham, and it's got such an amazing flavor. Now, the recipe is a little different than what I have here. I went to the market. They want you to go and find like the slab of the bake. It's like a bacon. It's like an Italian bacon, and to cut it from the slab. But this works fine. This is already pre-cut, so I don't have to worry about it. So now I'm going to heat the stove. So right now I'm just going to put it on like a medium heat, okay? And then I'm going to cook it till golden brown on all sides. So I have my handy little, this is my favorite tool right here. This is my favorite wooden spoon. It's got a curvature to it, so when you're cooking, you can kind of lift things and stir fry them a little bit easier than you could with a flat edge one. I did bring a couple others just in case, and I will probably be using this. So when we cook the pasta, I'll be using this one, a little bit different. And another one. I got about 20 of these things in my house, so just brought a couple collections here that I could use any one that I need to, so I'm always prepared. So what I'm going to do is get the oil in there, and I just kind of swirl it around a little bit. And you just want to kind of coat the pan. And I notice here it's not coating 100%, so I'm just going to go and add a tiny bit more. Just don't overdo it too much. I love cooking with this kind of stove. This is a gas stove. Now, why is there a difference between a gas stove and an electric stove? Well, electric stove, the burners just turn red or orange, right? And you really don't know what medium is. It's the same color regardless. So I'm just going to let that heat for just a second. Then we're going to throw our pancetta in, and we're going to kind of get it for golden brown. So it says that we're going to cook it for 8 minutes. Again, always have a timer, especially when you're first learning to cook. But what I wanted to do today is I wanted to show you literally reading it, and doing exactly as it says, because it says we're going to cook it for 8 minutes. Now, again, each stove is different. Each person is different. So you have to kind of judge it, but watch it. Don't just put it on the stove and walk away. So now, and if you put it in the pan, you're going to notice, you hear that sound? That's the sizzle. Yeah. Okay. So now, you see the curve makes it easier to cook. This is one of my favorite pans at home. So I'm just kind of separating the bacon or the pancetta, and it's a little high, so I think I'm going to turn it a little bit lower, tiny bit. And here's our thing. So even though I set a timer, I still watch it very carefully, and maybe it cooks a little bit quicker than it should. You're going to see it's going to start, the fats are going to start burning off a little bit. So we just want to lightly cook it, okay? Okay. So I'm just going to let it sit there for a second, okay? And I'll check on it in a second. So now we're going to get prepared for what is the next step, okay? So now it says to do it for about 8 minutes, and then we need to get a slotted spoon. That's a slotted spoon. So it's got the holes in it, so when you take it out of the pan, the grease or whatever is going to fall through the slot. So, but it wants me to do that on a plate with a paper towel. So I got a collection of all my mom's old stuff. This is plates we had when I was a child. So I can't believe I still have it. Cooking is memories, you know? So I'm going to lay some paper towels down. Let's check on it again. And look at the color here, guys. So you can see it. It looks, you know, it's kind of getting golden brown. It's pretty much like it said. So what did it say? It said you're going to cook it until it's golden brown on all sides. Does that look like it's golden brown on all sides, guys? Now, a couple ways you could do this. You could use a slotted spoon, like I said, or you could just carefully do it, and I'll show you both. I'll show you how I would do it with this one. Be careful, it's hot, so what we're going to do, but the good thing is here, see, it's just going to get the grease out of it. It's like Italian bacon, the little bits of it. So if you'd followed the recipe and got the ingredient that he specifically asked for, you would have had to chop up that too. So, or again, you can use your spoon. Just be careful. Move the stuff like so, and you just want to make sure you don't grab the grease. You can just kind of do it over the side. So I've done both. You know, it just depends on what. But if you don't have a slotted spoon, that's one thing you can do. And then just set that aside because it's very hot. You don't want somebody to accidentally touch that on the stove. So here we go. There is your pancetta, all cooked. Okay, so now it says, add the garlic to the fat in the pan and cook until lightly brown, 1 minute. Okay, so this one here, now remember as I taught you guys in class, so this one's got numbers. Number 1, we already did it, preheating. Number 2, we just did it what we did here with the pancetta. Number 3 is kind of going in and has multiple steps in there. So we're gonna have to add the garlic. So we're gonna get the garlic ready to go. And then we're gonna stir in hot milk. Okay, so it wants whole milk, which we got. And I also got some half and half, which is milk and cream. So in a sense, this is kind of gonna be a comparable. And I didn't want to buy too big of a container, so you can get some, whatever you have at the market here. So what we're going to do, we're going to warm up the milk. So how much does it want? And again, cross-reference your recipe, your instructions with the directions and with the ingredients. So it says I need 5 cups of whole milk or more if needed hot. Okay, so we're going to kind of make a roux here. And so by doing so, we want the milk not to be cold. Now, what is 4 cups? I could measure this in my thing here if I want to. Or I can look on the label and it says this one, a serving size is 1 cup and there's 4 servings. So that means this entire container is 4 cups. So this is going to be exactly 4 cups. So I'm just going to pour the whole thing in here. I don't need to measure it. And then I'm going to measure 1 cup. So, and this one, I got a couple different ones here. I got another one, which I wanted to show you guys. I think I showed you this in class. 2 different styles, so it depends on what you want. I got these at Target, so they're real cheap. But I'm gonna measure 1 cup of cream in this cup. Now, again, you could do that in a measuring cup, right? But the problem is, let's say you measure it and you get it exactly at the top. Now you have to move it around. You have to pour it directly over it so it doesn't spill. So this is really for dry ingredients. These are for liquid ingredients. Okay, so let's see, 1 cup. Okay, so we're gonna go to the 1 cup line. There we go, and pour that in. Like I said, I did a substitution, and if you know that the substitution is gonna work, you can do that. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna warm up the milk. Okay, so let me warm up the milk. Okay, and now I'm gonna get out one of my other spoon, wooden tools. I didn't bring my wooden spoon, which I meant to bring, and watch it real closely. You just want to get, you don't want to get it boiling, you just want to get it hot, right? Because what you're gonna do, you're gonna blend this in with the other ingredients. The cold milk would not be able to combine properly with these, so. Okay, and again, be careful of the hot. So that was just to stir the 2 kinds of milk together. Okay, so we're gonna watch that. And now what we're gonna do is I'm going to, again, if it's always have handy, and let me find where I put it here, oven mitts. You're gonna need it for when you're cooking, and if you have a hot pan, it's always a good idea to have it because you don't wanna hurt yourself, okay? This is one my wife got from Alaska when we first started dating. And so it's kind of a memory for me. I like telling stories to you guys because, you know, hopefully you like my stories. Okay, so we're just gonna cook it for about a minute or so. Make sure it gets up to temperature. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, actually, let me move that out of the way so you guys can see it a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm gonna heat this back up again. Okay. So if I'd had the milk ready to go, I would not have had to turn the heat off. I could have just gone boom, boom, right through it. So I'm just gonna let that oil heat up a tiny bit more. So what are we gonna do next? Again, always go back and forth to the recipe. Always think, okay, what am I needing to learn? What do I need to do? So now we're warming up the milk. So what's the next step? Add in the garlic to the fat in the pan and cook until lightly golden brown, 1 minute. So set my timer to 1 minute, okay? And again, as you get more comfortable with this, you're gonna kind of know when it's cooked. Okay, so after I do that, then I whisk in the flour. Okay, so here is my flour. Now this is 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. I use gold medal. You can use whatever kind you have around the house, but you can use it for baking, whatever you want to use it for, but it's good for this kind of stuff. So let's see how this is doing over here. Okay, so you can see there's grease in here, and this is what's going to allow the garlic to cook. Because normally if you just cook a garlic without doing the thing we did here with the pancetta, you're going to want to put a tiny bit of olive oil in there, or butter, or a little bit of both. Okay, so now we're going to have the flour and the garlic ready to go. Okay, so what else do we have to do? And then we're going to cook the flour with the garlic, with the oil, for about 1 to 2 minutes. Then, after that, we're going to whisk in the hot milk and raise this temperature to high. So right now, it's just kind of on a low temperature, okay? Don't want it to be cooking too high, okay? And now, I'm going to throw in the garlic. And when you hear that sound, you don't want to put the garlic into a cold pan. Always put it into a pan that's hot. You want it to start sizzling right away. So let's get our thing. And let's set our timer to our 1 minute, like it said. So, Mr. Flay, we're following your recipe. I'm just going to mix it around. And I wish you guys were here. I wish you could smell this, because you can just smell the garlic. It's just such an amazing aroma. If in a pinch, you guys could use powder, the granulated garlic, but honestly, I wouldn't do that. For the little amount of time it takes to cut garlic and mince it like this, I wouldn't spend the time or I wouldn't go and do the other one, because it just has much more flavor than you're going to get in the powdered garlic. So we're getting our flour ready here, okay? So now it said to take the flour, okay? So now I'm going to whisk in the flour and cook for 1 to 2 minutes. So let's go and set our timer again. And I'm going to get my whisk. Here's my wire whisk, okay? And then let me get my flour. And I'm just going to kind of put the flour in there. So this is 3 tablespoons of flour. Okay. And I'm going to mix it in. I'm going to make kind of a roux. Whenever you take an oil and flour, it makes a roux. This is kind of common in New Orleans cuisine. And I will share with you one recipe I make. I make a bunch of New Orleans foods. I want to learn to make jambalaya. I've never done that. But I make a shrimp étouffée, if anybody's ever had that. But you need to make this kind of a roux. It's like flour and an oil or some kind of fat. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our recipe and say whisk in the hot milk and raise the heat to a high. Okay, so we're on a low right now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the heat on the milk. The milk should be warm by now. And you can kind of see the steam coming off of it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to whisk in the milk. Okay. I'm just going to kind of then stir it. We're trying to make kind of like a bechamel sauce, kind of like that we do for, and then that's something I taught some of you guys how to do. So just going to kind of, now this is where the whisk is handy instead of using like a wooden spoon or something like that. Okay, so we're just going to kind of mix it. And what it's going to do is it's going to get this creamy texture. And once we're done with this and this is ready to go, we're going to throw the cheese in with it. And that's when it's going to get really yummy. That's going to be the cheese sauce. So look at the texture here, guys. So it's kind of getting a little creamier. So now I'm going to pour a little bit more milk in. Okay. And we're going to raise it up to high. I'm going to raise up the temperature a little bit more. So again, we're just going to see it's bubbling here. So that's what you want it to do. And just don't stop stirring it. Keep on going. Okay, so let's go back to the recipe again. Okay, so let's make sure we're doing everything we need to do. Whisk in the hot milk. Raise the heat to high and cook, whisking constantly until thickened. Then whisk in the eggs until incorporated, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're going to, while that's doing that, another thing, again, this is why it's important for you to always read the recipe very clearly So I'm going to do one thing here with the eggs. Let me just keep an eye on this. I'm going to lower it down a tiny bit here. Looks like it's kind of cooking real fast. But look at that bubble texture here. It's getting a little thicker. Okay. So how are we doing? We got about 2.5 minutes left up to the timer, so I'll just keep on whisking it. Okay. So this is what happens when you mix some kind of butter, some kind of oil, and a flour. It makes this amazing sauce. And this is kind of common, everybody, that when you're making mac and cheese, you don't just throw cheese into the macaroni. What you're doing is you're actually making like this kind of a sauce, kind of like a bechamel sauce. And I've made that sauce many, many times. That was actually one of the assignments I had for you guys that you could do in the 2 class, is talk about and how to make a bechamel sauce, which is a little challenging thing to do. But now you guys get to see me do it instead of me talking about it. And I'm sure you're tired of just watching YouTube videos on how to do all these things. So we're just going. Also notice the kind of pan I have here. So this, you could use any kind of pan. I like this one, the way it conducts the heat. It's like one of my favorite pans in my kitchen. It's very sturdy, it's non-stick. But I probably have about 30 pans at home. Yeah, and no room to store them in. So if I ever do move, hopefully my next kitchen will be a little bit larger, where I'll have more room to store things. So what do you guys think? Should I have my own cooking show? You think that'll work? Okay. It's fun as a first-year teacher to teach you guys something that I'm just passionate about. I've been cooking for probably 35 years. And I like sharing stories, so I don't want to just sit here and watch me stir, but my stepmom was the first person that got me interested in cooking. And as I probably told you guys, she was the worst cook on the planet. She was horrible. We didn't even want to go to Thanksgiving dinner because of how bad it was. But she tried, but she taught me how to make Italian food. She taught me how to make lasagna. She did not teach me this kind of stuff. This stuff I learned on my own, watching videos, watching Food Network, reading a recipe. So this is why it's important. If you can read a recipe, you can make anything. You really can. You just have to pay attention to it. Okay, so look at this texture. So let's kind of look at it for a second here. Make that away for a second. So look at the thickness here. See that? You can see it's getting a little thicker, right? Okay, so now, oops. Okay, so now it looks like it's getting the right texture that I want, the right kind of consistency. So I don't think I need to cook it much more. Okay, so now since there is one step I've forgotten. This is a good demonstration of why you have to be careful, and this was accidental. But one thing I need to do, so I'm just going to turn the heat off because I don't want to leave this unattended. I can turn the heat back on in just a second. But what I need to do is I need to take the eggs, and I just need to quickly blend them. It just takes a second to do it. You can just use a fork. Use a bowl that has high sides to it, because by doing so, it's not going to splatter and go all over the place. So I'm just lightly beating the eggs. You don't have to like make them, anything serious there. So now, what's the next thing? So now, once it's thickened, about 5 minutes, I'm going to whisk in the eggs until incorporated and let it cook for 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, so we'll get our timer out. Let's set it for 2 minutes, okay? And then after the 2 minutes, we're going to remove it from the heat and whisk in our herbs, our thyme, our cayenne, and the different cheeses. Okay, so this is where it gets fun. Okay, so now, what I'm going to do, let's stir it again. Let's put the heat back on. Okay, and now I'm going to take my egg, put my egg yolks in it. So it's going to give it texture, it's going to give it flavor, it's going to kind of bind the ingredients together. That's what it's going to do. Okay. Now this is where if I was cooking, my wife would be in the kitchen and she would be cleaning while I'm doing this. So and now we're just blending this together, so we're going to time it again, about 2 minutes. But now look at the color. So now the color has kind of changed from a whitish color to like almost like a little bit of orangish color to it. And look at that. And if you see, like I'm going through here and notice I'm seeing some clumps in here. So I'm going to take the whisk and I'm going to kind of get the lumps out of it a little bit. Okay. Because I don't want lumps in it. Like if you're making a gravy, you don't want to do that either. So, okay, so now, while this is heating up, we're going back to our recipe. Again, go back and forth, back and forth. Now we're going to remove it from the heat. Okay, so we're going to take it off the heat. And don't just keep it on the burner, because the burner still, there's heat on it. If you put your hand over it, you can still feel the heat coming up from it. And so that's still going to cook it. I move it to a different burner so there's no heat coming up from the bottom of it, because right now we don't want to cook it anymore. That is the exact consistency that we're looking for right here. And if you want, once this cools down, move it back or put it to a different burner. Or I can do this. I'm lucky enough to have 6 burners here, so I can do this so it's a little bit closer to me. Okay, so now let's go back to the cookbook and let's see what it says. Okay, so remove from the heat and whisk in the thyme and cayenne, okay? Here's our thyme, here's our cayenne. Again, so now this, you can get this, this is a, recently found this, organic spices. So I'm just gonna put them up here so you guys can see. These are just Trader Joe's ones. These are things I use almost every day, you know. And I have some other ones I'm gonna throw in here. Nutmeg. Anybody have our nutmeg? Putting in, this is usually, you think of it like holiday sweets and stuff like that, but it's really good in this. And this is a promo to this guy, Sweet Lou. He sells these things. His family makes these things and sells them at the farmers markets over in Claremont and Upland and maybe other places, but he makes all these mixes where it has everything already in it, and it's very low sodium. The problem with salt is it's very high sodium, whereas you can do healthy things. And this one here, what do we got in it? It's got black pepper, garlic, bell pepper, red pepper, herbs, and spices. And I got like about 7 different flavors that he does. He does a barbecue, he does all sorts of things here. So I usually use this for everything. Okay, so now we're gonna put in the cayenne, and we're gonna put in the thyme. Doesn't that look lovely? Okay. And now it's off the heat, and now I'm just gonna mix those flavors in. So it's like, look at that, it's like a cream sauce. You can start throwing in other spices. You don't have to do exactly as it says. And this is why I kind of brought my little display here. So I'm going to put a little of this in. So I put this almost in everything. So I'm just gonna do a little sprinkling. It's got some pepper in it, which adds another kind of flavor. You don't want to overdo it. You can, if you put it in, you can't take it out. But you can always add more. This is citrusy garlic seasoning blend, which is really good and 0 calories and 0 sodium. So this was garlic, onion powder, lime juice, red pepper, bay leaves. And I put this in almost everything. You can put it on eggs, you name it. I literally put it in almost everything I cook. It's like my new favorite spice. Okay, so again, just play with stuff, and that's the fun. Okay, and now we're just gonna add that in there, whisk those in, but you don't have to add that stuff. So this is still heating, so what I wanna do is I wanna get the water boiling. I don't wanna put it in non-boiling water, so what I'm using today, I love this brand. I use many different brands, DeGecko or DeGecko, I think it is pronounced. So we're just gonna use a regular elbow macaroni noodle. And we'll be getting into our cheeses really soon here. Okay, so let's go back to the cookbook. Okay, so we whisked in the eggs. We basically added the thyme, the cayenne, and all the different cheeses until completely melted. So remember, when we started this class, there's 2 different measurement bowls. Why did I do that? One is do your prep work ahead of time. So now I'm gonna take all the cheeses in the big bowls, and I'm gonna start throwing them in. So let's put this one in. Okay. So that one is the Asiago cheese. This is a very sharp Irish cheddar cheese, which is really good. And I hope my pan is going to be big enough for this, because I got a lot of cheese here. So let's just mix these guys together first. Okay. Okay. And this is where probably that is not the best one to use. I'm going to pull out a different one because now you're just trying to really blend them together, right? Okay. 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 Looking good, guys. Okay. So now we're going to go and add the next one. Okay. So, and what we're going to do is we're going to add all the cheeses, season with salt and pepper. If the mixture appears too thick, you can add additional warm milk. So we do have warm milk sitting here just in case we feel like it's not thin enough. Okay, so now we're going to put in my Australian cheddar cheese, which was not in the recipe, but I decided just to try something new. It wanted American cheddar cheese. Okay, and honestly, I've never tried Australian cheese, so I don't really know, but I'm sure it looks pretty good, so let's give it a try. It's looking a little thick right now, and so I think it might be a little thick, so I'm going to pour in a little more warm milk. But don't put too much in it, because if you put too much and it gets a little bit runny, then you can't take it back. That's why it's always nice to have it right handy with you. You can throw it in. This is why it's important when you're making these things, always make sure you have all the ingredients and you have enough. Not just check that you have the ingredient, always make sure you have the right quantity of the ingredients. So now we have our fontina cheese, and fontina is delicious. Sorry. It's very creamy. Very, very creamy. Okay. Throw that in. And Parmesan. There we go. So like I say, if you don't like cheese, this is not the recipe for you. Okay, so now we're just going to mix it. Okay. So it's a little thick, so I'm going to go and add a little bit more milk. Just kind of judge it. Get the consistency you want. You don't want it too runny, but you want at least where it's, you know, not too thick. So now let's go back to the recipe. Let's see what we need to do next. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we have to do one other thing, which we are going to put in the pancetta. Remember we did the pancetta? Okay, so I'm going to put the pancetta in now. And it gives a little bit of saltiness. That's the thing about bacon. It has a salty flavor and a crunchy flavor, so. Okay, so now, and if you wanted to put more of this stuff in there, you could. It's there. So this is your cheese sauce. This is it. Okay. So now what we got is an amazing, yummy thing. So it's going to be this with the pasta, with the cheese on top, and now let's get the croutons ready. So this is, like I said, this is not part of the recipe. This is my own interpretation of it. So let me get out one of my gadgets here. Now I didn't bring the whole thing, and I probably should have brought the whole thing just to show it, but I showed you this, guys, in class. This is an immersion blender. Now this is great for making soups. This, like if you have a cream soup, like cream of cauliflower. I use this mostly to make my pasta sauces. So when I make a homemade pasta sauce, I have the Italian tomatoes and all the different stuff I put into the pot, and I put it and I grind it down. So you can put it in a food processor, but this is just such an easy way to do it. So what I'm going to do here, plug it in. And with the immersion blender, what I did is I went and purchased, and this is a Cuisinart, by the way, and I got my little blade inside of it. Okay, you can see here. Okay, this is for really good quick chops, and I do have a full food processor at home, but it's luggy. It's very, you know, bulky and heavy, so I'm not going to bring that with me. These are organic croutons for Caesar. You can use whatever flavor you want. I'm just going to pop them into this little dish here. This looks like the right amount. Okay. Seal it up. Okay. Put it in there. Okay. And always unplug it when you're done and wrap it around the cord. So. Out of the way. So now this is ready to go. Be careful, these blades are really sharp. So we're just going to move that out of the way. There we go. There's your breadcrumbs. So real easy to make. And it says, put the cooked macaroni in a large bowl. Okay, so let's get our large bowl. Actually, let's see here. Here's a large bowl. Okay. So we're gonna cook it, we're gonna drain it, and we're gonna cook it for 5 minutes. So let's get the, here. 5 minutes on the clock. Okay. And then we're gonna add the cheese sauce and the parsley. Okay, so here's the parsley. Again, so that's gonna go in next. Okay, so then we're gonna transfer it to the dish, and then we're gonna combine an additional 1/4 cup and stuff, or 1/2 cups of the cheeses. And then we're going to sprinkle evenly on top and bake the dish until it's through on top until light golden brown, 12 to 15 minutes. Then we'll remove to the oven and we're going to let it rest 10 minutes. Why do we want it to rest? Well, because whenever you cook something, it's just hot and it's going to be a little bit liquidy or runny. This is going to allow it to where the ingredients are going to meld together. And it's kind of like if you make a pie. If anybody made a pie, is same kind of thing. You don't want to take the pie out of the oven just to cut into it and cook it. You want it to get a little solidified. So that's what this is going to do with the mac and cheese. The water's getting pretty close, but let's take a break, and I'll be back shortly. So we're waiting for the water to boil. We're going to make the pasta. Once that's ready, I'm going to throw the pasta in, and then you don't need to see the pasta cooking, but once the pasta's cooked, I will show you the next step. We'll combine everything, put it in the oven, and then we'll get started on our next things here. So we'll talk to you soon. Now we're going to take what we've done so far and put all the ingredients together. So, so in your absence, I have made the pasta. So this is just a regular elbow macaroni pasta. This cooked 5 minutes till the al dente. So it's kind of got a chewiness to the pasta that is perfect, but it's not crunchy. If you undercook it, it's gonna be a little crunchy. Over, it's gonna be mushy. So so I went to the 5 minutes and I realized it was not really cooked, so I did 1 more minute and then it was perfectly al dente. So here we go. This is the only things we have left to make this dish. So what are we gonna do? We go back to the cookbook, right? So let's go and see what it says. So put the cooked macaroni in a large bowl, which we have done, and add the cheese. So here's the cheese sauce. So now I'm gonna take the cheese sauce and we're gonna add the cheese sauce into it. And some little remnants of the pancetta and so forth. Perfect. Okay, so now go back to the recipe, okay? And it says add the pancetta, the parsley, and stir until combined. Here's our parsley. I'm gonna throw that in there. And now we're just gonna stir it until it's combined. This is mac and cheese. Now, let me let you guys know, this is, Bobby Flay's, a professional chef. He's been doing this for a long, long time. And his recipes are going to be a little bit more complicated, so don't feel like this is the only way you can make this. I have a cookbook that is only about mac and cheese. And some of them are very simple to make. So that is what we got. So now, again, always going back and forth. So let's go back and says, okay, so we stirred and combined, transfer to the baking dish. Remember, we had a baking dish, we buttered it, okay? And you could have buttered it right before you were gonna do this. Either way is fine. Just be careful because this is hot, and just hold it real tightly and just pour it in. I'll get every bit of it that I can get. Okay, a little bit more, and there we go. And it perfectly fits into the pan. Okay. So, go back to the recipe. What does it say? Combine the additional 1/4 cup of each of the cheeses, Asiago, cheddar, fontina, and Parmesan into a bowl and sprinkle evenly. So, what we're gonna do, throw them into a bowl. And the reason I did the little bowls like this, just so you could see what it looked like in quantities individually. And the colors are a little bit different in these ones as well, so. But I think combining them into one first just makes sure you get a good blend of the cheeses instead of like a clump of one flavor and a clump of another flavor. And now we're gonna Put even more cheese on. And if you have too much, that's fine too. Okay. Just going to spread it evenly. We're just going to kind of throw it in the corners, make sure you cover all the tops. Okay. So this is mac and cheese. Okay. Now, one second. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our breadcrumbs and sprinkle them on top. And we may use a bunch of them. We may not use all of them, but we can use as much as we want here. You don't have to do this. Like I said, this is not part of the recipe. I just added this one because I thought it would taste real yummy. It gives a little bit of a crunch to it. Okay, and I'll go in a little bit more. So let's say you went to a restaurant and you had this dish. What would you pay for this? That's the question I always ask myself. The reason I bring this up is that's what got me into cooking. Because when I was younger, I didn't have the money to be able to afford to go out to restaurants and eat at nice places. And so, especially as a college kid. So what happened is I said, well, if I learn how to cook it, then I can make it myself and I don't have to pay those prices. That's your dish. This is it. Now we already have the preheated oven. So again, go back to the recipe. So we've added all the ingredients and it says, bake until the dish is heated through and the top is light golden brown, 12 to 15 minutes. So we'll get our handy timer out. Always put on the underside of the timing because, if you put it to too much, you might burn it. Now, one thing you can do also, which I have brought with me, just in case, it's a good idea to have this, especially when you're baking things like this, is some aluminum foil, okay? And the reason being is what you might be doing is, and sometimes what people do is they'll put the aluminum foil on it first for a short period of time, let it bake with the heat and stuff with it covered, then they'll uncover it and let it get crispy brown on top. This one does not say to do that, but if we want to get it a little bit more cooked and we don't want to get burnt, you can put a little bit of this on top of it and that will prevent it from getting burned. Okay, and then that's it. 12 to 15 minutes, remove from the oven and rest for 10 minutes. So we have our preheated oven. So now let's put it in. Make sure you don't forget to set your timer. So I'm going to check on it in 12 minutes. I might even look at it a little bit before then, just to see how it's cooking, and then we'll show you the final product. So, so we're going to take a little bit of a break. We'll let this finish cooking, and when it's done, we'll show you what it looks like. So talk to you soon. So I have put the mac and cheese into the oven. As the recipe said, it said 12 to 15 minutes. So let's go check it out. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, and have your oven mitts on. Okay, let's see. Always do the smell test too, see if it smells good. You know what it smells like? Heaven and cheese. So, okay, so typically what you're gonna do is, like I said, you're gonna let it sit, and if you read the recipe, it's gonna say let it sit for a little bit of time because you want it to settle just like any dish. So we're just gonna go and slice into it just to see what it looks like here. So just gonna make little cuts here. And look at the breadcrumbs on top. A little toasty and crunchy. Just be careful, it's gonna be hot. So now the first piece you take out is like when the first time you take the first piece of pie out of a pie. Kind of falls apart sometimes, so we'll do our best and let's hope that it goes real well here. And sometimes it will fall apart until it solidifies a little bit longer, but we'll do our best. All right, and there we go. Now if I was making this dish, I'd probably make a salad with it, or I'd do something else. I wouldn't just have mac and cheese, but that's the dish. This is macaroni and cheese carbonara. So let's do the taste test. Let's see if it's good. Okay, well, I'll be honest with you. I'd pay 25 bucks or more for that at a restaurant. It's pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. Now, keep in mind, this one was a lot more work to make. You can make very simplified dishes of mac and cheese. This is just one dish that goes a little bit further. But again, I will share more of those with you in class so you can kind of get a better idea on how to make it at home if you don't want to, go to all this work. Because obviously there's a lot more work involved. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for joining me today. This is RVS signing out from Mr. Sutphin's Cooking School. Have a nice day, and we'll see you soon.